Hello, my name is David Cook and I am a student in the Global Prize program at Texas Tech University. In this presentation, we're going to discuss the effect of teacher preparation on teacher self-efficacy and on teacher beliefs. Teachers today come to the profession through a variety of paths. There's the traditional method of teacher preparation. There are people who come in through other alternative certification methods. In this paper, we want to see how those preparation methods affect their views of self-efficacy and their teacher beliefs. Looking at the literature, first of all, about educational philosophy, we see that this is the attitudes and beliefs about education and learning that one holds. It's shaped by your experiences. Often pre-service teachers are unable to articulate this very well. Teacher education programs serve as places that help to solidify and establish that philosophy of education and give pre-service teachers a place to explore those things. Self-efficacy is the degree to which a teacher feels confident in his or her abilities. Teachers that are confident in their abilities tend to have longer careers, tend to have more satisfying careers. Teacher education programs can contribute to this self-efficacy. It's also interesting to note that often teachers of low SES students have less self-efficacy, which results in burnout and other things. In this study, we focused on data from the TALIS survey 2013. Specifically, we looked at questions 11, 12, 13, and 32. Question 11 is a question, were you in a teacher preparation program or not? Question 12 asks about your preparation. Question 13 asks about your feelings of self-efficacy, and 32 asks about your opinions and beliefs about education. We're going to look at two research questions in this project. First, is there a difference in perceived level of preparation based on the nature of pre-service preparation? And second, is there a difference in a teacher's personal beliefs on teaching and learning based on the nature of their pre-service preparation? Once again, these two questions will guide us through the rest of this presentation. In this study, a t-test is going to be used to compare question 11 to both questions 13 and question 32. Question 11 asks if you were part of a teacher training program or not. And question 13 is about your self-efficacy. How do you feel about your content skills, about your pedagogical skills, and about your classroom practice skills? Question 12 is then compared to those same two questions using a one-way ANOVA. Question 12 has three parts. It asks about the content of your preparation in terms of content, in terms of pedagogy, and also in terms of classroom practice. As we look at results, we're going to examine each question separately. We're going to spend some time talking about self-efficacy and how that is affected by teacher preparation. And then we'll talk specifically about personal beliefs and how that is affected by teacher preparation. First, we tested to see if teachers felt very prepared in their content knowledge and their pedagogy and their practice. If they felt more prepared if they'd been through a preparation program or if they'd been through no program at all. Notice that a Likert score of 3 meant that you felt you were well prepared. You can see that there is a difference and it is significant. However, testing for effect size, we see that these effects are fairly small. But in general, teachers felt better about their content, pedagogy, and practice knowledge if they had been through a preparation program. Next, we want to look at feelings of self-efficacy based on content preparation. And this means, did the subject have content preparation for every subject they teach, for some of the subjects they teach, or no content preparation at all? And how did that affect their self-efficacy in content, pedagogy, and practice? We see that in general, the more content preparation they had, the more their self-efficacy increased. These results are significant, but the effects are relatively small, with the exception of the effect in the content area. This effect is a medium effect. Likewise, we looked at the effect of pedagogy preparation versus self-efficacy feelings, and we noticed that the more pedagogy preparation teacher candidates had, the better they felt about themselves in terms of content, pedagogy, and practice. Once again, these results are significant, but the effects are relatively small in nature. The exception being the effect in the pedagogy level. Students that had more pedagogy preparation felt better about their pedagogy preparation. Finally, we looked at classroom practice versus self-efficacy. Classroom practice would be something like student teaching, practicums, internships, things like that. And what we notice once again is that the more classroom practice, the better students feel specifically about their content, pedagogy, and practice. But once again, even though these differences are significant, they are not large effects, with the exception once again of the practice effect, which is a medium effect. Next, we looked at personal beliefs. In this, participants were asked to what degree they agreed with 4 statements. This was a Likert scale again, 1 meaning strongly disagree, 2 meaning disagree, 3 meaning agree, 4 meaning strongly agree. The 4 statements were: 1, my role as a teacher is to facilitate students' own inquiry. 2, students learn best by finding solutions to problems on their own. Question 3, students should be allowed to think of solutions to practical problems themselves before the teacher shows them how they are solved. 4, thinking and reasoning processes are more important than specific curriculum content. You should note that these 4 questions really actually kind of tend to place a teacher on a continuum of student-centered versus teacher-centered education. So first we did a t-test to look at personal beliefs based on if you were in a teacher education program or not. For statement 2, Levine's test was significant, meaning that the variances for the groups was not the same. The differences between the teachers who were in a teacher education program and those who were not were significant for all 4 of the statements, but the effect sizes were all very minimal, meaning that the significance probably just came from the fact that it's a huge sample and not that there is really anything going on there. Comparing personal beliefs to content preparation, using Levine's statistic, we have equal variances for the first statement, but not equal variances for the groups for statements 2, 3, and 4. We also found that we had significant differences between the groups in statements 1, 2, and 4, but not in statement 3. The effect sizes for all of these were very negligible. Post hoc tests showed us that for statements 1, 2, and 4, there was a significant difference between participants who had content preparation in all classes and participants who just had content preparations in some of the classes. For the second statement, there's a significant difference between participants who had content in some of the classes and who had no content preparation. While for the fourth statement, there is a significant difference between participants who had content preparation in all the classes they teach and those who had no content preparation. For several of the statements, it's interesting that the mean of the group with no content preparation was actually higher than the mean of the group with content preparation for some of the classes they teach. Moving on to pedagogical preparation, the Levine test is significant for statements 1 and 4. There are significant differences for all 4 statements. There are very minimal effect sizes for all of the statements. When we start looking at post hoc tests, we see that there are a few significant differences, but once again, all the effects are very minimal. We still have the same turning around where for some of the statements, the group with no pedagogical training actually does better or scores higher than the group with pedagogical training in just the course, in a few of the courses they teach. When you move on to classroom practice preparation, you see almost the exact same identical thing. Once again, through all of these, we're seeing significant differences, but very low effect sizes. Our post hoc tests are indicating some significant differences, but once again, these differences have very minimal effect sizes. Once again, the group that has had no practice preparation in some cases scores higher than the group that has had practice preparation in some of the classes they teach. Overall, when you look at teacher preparation programs, you see that they do significantly increase views of self-efficacy in content, pedagogy, and classroom practice. However, they're fairly small effect sizes. Overall, you'll see that the teachers feel fairly prepared, as most of the means are in the 3 range, which means well prepared. This doesn't minimize the importance of teacher education programs. It just says that there may also be something else going on here that we need to take a look at. As we move on to talking about beliefs, teacher beliefs, we need to see that in the TALIS questionnaire, the question that we focused on was mostly looking at the difference between student-centered versus teacher-centered. Most of the teachers tended to lean more towards the teacher-centered in their responses. There were significant results but very small effects, and educational philosophy appears to come from other sources because people who had no preparation in some of their courses actually had a higher mean value than people who had preparation in some of the courses they taught. In conclusion, teacher preparation does affect teacher self-efficacy and teacher beliefs, but it's a very complicated relationship and it needs further study. Self-efficacy is incredibly important in this market. We need teachers to stick with the job, and for them to do that, they need to feel good about what they're doing. But once again, it does seem also that educational philosophy is kind of difficult to develop, and so maybe we need more research on where that comes from. Maybe it comes from previous experiences or other sources. These are some of the resources I used and references. I would like to take on a personal note, say thank you to Dr. Gottlieb, and also say that I really enjoyed the online classes, and I'm not just saying that so you'll give me a good grade on this. I really did appreciate your work and look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you so much, and guns are up.